to southern and eastern Kentucky. This is WYMT Mountain News at 5:30.
Good evening, I'm Steve Hensley.
And I'm Olivia Calfee.
We begin with a developing story out of Frankfort tonight.
There's been a large police presence at the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet building. State police say they received a call around 3 p.m. about a possible person with a gun in the KYTC building and Mayo Underwood building. KSP says there have not been any shots fired, nor have there been any injuries. We will continue to follow this story and update you as we learn more.
Certainly the good news is that it appears nobody was hurt and nothing major really happened there, but of course we'll keep following it. Mental health has been a hot topic of discussion in recent years, with the focus shifting on children and their mental well-being.
Now the U.S. Department of Education is taking action, awarding one Southeast Kentucky co-op funding to help improve school-based mental health resources. WYMT's Alyssa Williams has the story.
Students' mental health has become a priority for the Southeast South Central Educational Cooperative in London, and thanks to federal funding, the co-op will now have the means to put their plans of helping students into action.
Part of what we're going to do with the grant is identify clinical mental health professionals that can come alongside our school districts and provide mental health services to students that are in their schools.
Those with the co-op say the $6 million awarded by the U.S. Department of Education will help to prevent students from having to leave school to receive the mental health resources they need.
Right now, we just don't have enough school counselors or other mental health professionals in our schools to support the student needs. So we're looking to increase the number of professionals that are able to serve students on site in their school buildings.
The co-op also plans to partner with local universities and other organizations in this mission.
We're going to be able to partner with some of the outside agencies like our Frisky Group and some of the other mental health organizations. So that's very exciting for the co-op to be able to expand our services in that respect.
Rockcastle County School Superintendent Carrie Ballinger says she is excited to see these plans implemented within her district.
Oftentimes our region is overlooked. And it's important to know that we can be on the cutting edge and that we're making sure that our students, all of the students in this part of Kentucky, are receiving all of the services that they need and deserve as well.
Aiming to improve students' mental health in Southeast Kentucky. In London, Alyssa Williams, WYMT Mountain News.
Those with the Southeast South Central Educational Co-op say the funding is only allotted for 5 years, but they hope to help as many of the 76 schools they serve as they can.
Well, when we showed you this camera yesterday at 5:30, when we were able to, outside of severe weather coverage, it was a very ominous picture from Buffalo Mountain in southern Perry County. Today, none of the sort. Fair weather cumulus clouds. You may notice a little bit of haze. It's not humidity. That's something else we'll get to in a little bit. But there's the view from UVA-wise, at least half the view from UVA-wise. A little bit of that high cloudiness there as well, as we see a beautiful look at the campus. Temperatures in the mid-60s there. Clean sweep on pinpoint Doppler. We bring the temperatures into play. How about middle and upper 60s to near 70 across southwest Virginia, even into parts of West Virginia, but everybody else making a run into the low, even middle 70s as you head closer to Lake Cumberland. Your forecast first through the next 12 hours. A little chilly one out there tonight. Look at this. We start in the 70s, drop into the 60s by midnight, and wake up in the upper 40s on our Thursday morning. Guys, I'll have the details on what this means for perhaps a little open window action overnight in a few minutes.
All right, Evan, thank you. White House and congressional leaders have appointed senior leaders to head up debt ceiling negotiations on their behalf. The Biden administration says it is willing to compromise on changes to domestic energy projects and clawing back about $30 billion in unspent COVID relief money. Republicans want to add stricter work requirements for Medicaid and food stamp recipients. Congressional leaders say they also discussed raising the debt limit for several more years in order to avoid a last-minute crisis like the one that is happening right now. House Republicans say they are open to that, but not without even more budget cuts.
When President Biden joins the leaders of the world's wealthiest democracies for the G7 summit in Japan on Friday, he will arrive with an agenda. The war in Ukraine is now entering its 15th month and has dominated the focus of the G7 since last year's meeting hosted by Germany in the Bavarian Alps. For this year's summit in Hiroshima, Japan wants to also take aim at China. Beijing, the U.S., and its allies argue has bullied G7 members on a variety of economic and trade issues by hampering or blocking foreign competition and also by failing to adequately protect foreign intellectual property.
We've got to make sure that we can compete, which means you got to make sure that the playing field is level or as level as possible. China doesn't play fair.
The White House says the G7 will also address efforts to contain North Korea as well as energy, food, and climate security.
Now an update on migrant crossings along the southern border. Since the pandemic-era restrictions were lifted last week, Homeland Security officials are reporting a steady decrease in encounters at the southern border, though they are cautiously warning it is still too soon to draw any firm conclusions on the downward trend.
Including less than 4,000 encounters each of the last 2 days. This represents a decrease of 56%, or less than half of the average encountered in the 4 days leading up to the lifting of Title 42.
And while the numbers are dropping, many facilities housing migrants are over capacity. Thousands are being sent north, where cities like New York are struggling to find places for them. Mayor Eric Adams says more than 4,000 migrants arrived last week, and the city is now using public school gyms to house them.
A group of Democratic lawmakers say they are offended to walk the halls with Congress with George Santos.
They are moving to force a vote to expel the indicted Republican. CBS's Nicole D'Antonio has the story from Capitol Hill.
House Democrats challenged their Republican colleagues to take a stand on embattled Congressman George Santos.
We all know that Representative George Santos is a liar and a fraud and should be expelled from Congress.
Lawmakers moved to force a vote on whether to expel Santos after the New York Republican was charged with 13 criminal counts, including fraud and money laundering.
I am personally offended that I am walking the same halls and voting on the same legislation as a complete and utter fraud like George Santos.
The vote faces slim odds, requiring a 2/3 majority to pass. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy says Santos is innocent until proven guilty.
So what I would like to do is move this to ethics. I think I would like the House to take up this work.
That reaction infuriated Democrats, who say the Ethics Committee is already investigating.
So the ethics investigation is an out. It is an excuse.
In addition to the financial crimes, Santos has been accused of lying about everything from his religious background to his education to his work history. Responding to the move to expel him, the congressman told CBS News Democratic bias is at play.
Democrats are really good at trying to play judge and jury and trying to hold people guilty before they've even been given a free shot at a trial.
Santos has admitted to fabricating parts of his resume, but says the indictment is a witch hunt. He has already announced plans to run for re-election. Nicole D'Antonio, CBS News, Washington.
Now, a number of Republicans have called on Santos to step down.
Today, an appeals court is hearing arguments on abortion pills. A 3-judge panel in New Orleans will weigh in on mifepristone. Earlier this year, a lower court ruled the government broke the law when it approved the drug decades ago. The judge says the FDA failed to consider the mental trauma of abortions. The panel's ruling will set the stage for how the Supreme Court will eventually approach the issue. When we return on Mountain News at 5:30, when you book a flight, you hope everything goes according to plan.